few months ago, I made a video about the battery degradation in my Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV, which is, for anybody who knows about the car, or even own one for that matter, would possibly understand that the battery degradation is quite a problem for a lot of people. It certainly has been for me. And I had the car, well, I've had the car a year, and it was probably about within a month of owning it that I started to understand a lot of the issues that people had. So I started doing my own investigations and using an OBD2 Bluetooth device and an application called PHEV Watchdog, which I highly recommend, by the way. I started monitoring my battery, and when I first bought the car, I had 608 miles on it. It was a year old, but it had been owned by Mitsubishi and it was used for display purposes, so it wasn't a car that was heavily used at all. It was almost like brand new, even though it was a year old. So when I first got the car, I started making records of what happened and the battery degradation events. So when I first got the car, it had 608 miles, but when I first started recording data, just under 1,800 miles, and the battery capacity was 36.5 amp hours. Now, the actual battery capacity is 40 amp hours, but Mitsubishi restricted to 38 amp hours actual usage, because that means by having a 2 amp hour top buffer, it should mean that the battery lasts longer. Now, the issue with it is not the battery. There's nothing wrong with these batteries. They're fine. It's the software. The software artificially degrades the battery, and it thinks, it tells itself that the capacity of the battery is less than it actually is. That's my understanding. Okay. Now, I'm not going to claim that's exactly what's happening, but everything indicates towards that. So, what was my experience? Well, you can see the numbers here. As you can see, all of these dates represent a degradation event as recorded by the car. This is not software that I'm using. This is the software in the car. This is what it's reporting. And you'll see from December 18 right up to June 19, it went from 36.5 amp hours down to 34.2. So that's from 96.1% health down to 90. So in 6 months, it dropped 6%, just over 6%. That's a lot. There's no way that this battery should have dropped that far. So I was in conversations with Mitsubishi Motors for a long time. All this year, I have been emailing Mitsubishi Motors UK, giving them this exact data, everything you see here. And in June, they agreed to do a battery reset or a smoothing procedure or DB cam or whatever you want to call it. And you can see that it went from 34.2 amp hours up to 38.9, so almost 39 amp hours. So it actually clawed back one of the 2 amp hours they technically set aside for the buffer. And that was great. Since then, we can see that it's still carried on degrading, 38.8, 38.7 between 14th of June and the last reading I had was the 22nd of October. Gone from 38.9 down to 37.5. And you can see here on the 19th of October, God knows what was going on, because on the 19th of October, it dropped half an amp hour, which is a lot. I have had one other drop like that, and that was before the reset was performed, and that was back in April. And then just a few days later, another 0.1%. Normally it's 0.1%, and this is what owners will tell you. Oh no, actually I had 2.5. There you go, there's another 0.5 amp hour there in February, and then in April, a couple of months later, but only 1.5 amp hour loss since the reset was done, and that's brought me down to 37.5 amp hours as it is today as I'm recording this, but that's 98.7% health. Now, strictly speaking, I suppose one could say that if I hadn't had the reset, I'd be well on my way towards 80% battery capacity, and this time next year I would be knocking on the door of Mitsubishi saying, can I have a new battery please? Not that it needs one, but their warranty would cover a new battery. Or I think the reality is they do another smoothing process, and then you'd be back to square one. You'd have back up to, I don't know, whatever the smoothing process gives you, and then it starts to degrade again. So this is where I am today, 37.5 amp hours. I've got another bit of paper. I didn't really print this off very well, but the other bit of data that I did record quite simply was the number of, and I didn't know if this was useful or meaningful data at all, but the number of days between each degradation. So you can see here that the first loss from 36.5 to 36.4 was over a period of just 12 days. Then the next one was 5 days, 11, 13, 3 there. It doesn't seem to be much of a pattern, really, possibly 2 weeks on average. After the reset was done, though, in June, it seems that the actual period between drops, and there was some immediate drops after the reset, I kind of expected that, but we're looking at much longer periods of time, 25 days there. So it seems to be better, except when I had the half amp hour drop. Is that the half amp? Yeah, there was only a 3-day gap, so I'm hoping that's just a glitch. It is now, as I'm recording this, the 14th of November. The last drop was on the 22nd of October. I haven't worked out how many days that is yet, but that's quite a big gap as well. So I'm hoping that this is kind of the trend from now on, provided it sticks to 0.1 amp hours and it doesn't do this nonsense too often. It's still a hell of a degradation, but it isn't a degradation. I don't think it is. I don't think there's anything wrong with the battery. It's software. It's absolute software. So I have updated Mitsubishi. I've been sending them emails. I expect my name is Mud with Mitsubishi UK by now, because I bombard their inbox, giving them updates, providing them this data, hard black and white data. So when I got this drop here, within 3 days, it went down 0.6 of an amp hour, over half an amp hour. I emailed them again saying, this is ridiculous, what are you going to do? I basically asked them to actually do something. I mean, they did something back in June. I didn't pay for this process to be done. They had the car for a couple of days. They gave me a courtesy car, which was great. But you know, this is getting silly. Having said that, I'm only half an amp hour below, courtesy of the reset, admittedly, but today I'm only half an amp hour below what the full capacity should be, which is 38. So technically speaking, I'm in a good place at the moment, but only because of this. And I only got this because I moaned and moaned and moaned at Mitsubishi. You can see how long I started doing my recording. I don't know when it is I started talking to Mitsubishi. It was fairly early on, because bearing in mind the degradation was pretty swift at this point. You can see again the number of days between each degradation drop is quite a lot. It's quite short. And I think they, by the time I'd got to the stage where a car had only done 6,500 miles and it was down to 90%, which is absolutely ridiculous. 34.2 amp hours. So that's just mad. So I think they realised then, well, yeah, that's not right. something has to be done. So they did. Fair play to them. But this period, well, I don't know. From 38.9 down to 37.5, and 38 is actually what the maximum should be. And also, the actual period between the amount of time that elapses between supposed degradation is getting longer, or appears to be getting longer. And I hope that is a continuing trend, because if it is, then these 0.1 of an amp hour drops will be a little less painful. But if they're really short, like that, and certainly like these, that's not acceptable. So, what actually happened? Well, I emailed Mitsubishi and said, look, you know, I've had a half amp hour drop, and then a few days later I got another 0.1 amp hour drop. What's the score? You know, what are we doing here? And this is their response. Their response says, in case you can't read this too well, I'll read it out to you. Thank you for your patience while the supplied information has been reviewed by my technical department. That'll be Fred out the back, I expect. Now, the information that they're talking about, they asked me some questions about, how often do I charge? Do I fast charge? And one of the questions, which did amuse me, is how did I get the information? Because they didn't understand how it is. Where am I getting these numbers from? And this really surprised me, because I've been giving them this information for a year, almost a year. They did a reset back in June, and I told the guys at Mitsubishi there that it was an OBD2 Bluetooth adapter with the PHEV watchdog, and I even offered to show them. That they said, no, don't worry about it. And incidentally, the information that I got, I asked for their MUT3 data, and but basically the computer system that they use to read data off the computer, off the car rather, at the garage, I had exactly the same numbers, so I know without any shadow of a doubt that the numbers that I was giving them were the numbers from the car, no question. And this is within the last week. They asked me, how do I know what the numbers are? So I just emailed them back with information. This is how I charge the battery. I put it on a timer every night, and I charge it from about 11:30 at night to early morning. So I only ever charge when the battery's cold. In other words, I treat the battery with respect, and you have to. If you want a battery to last, you've got to treat it with respect. Don't fast charge it unless you need to. I've never fast charged my car. It's got a CHAdeMO adapter. But I have never fast charged it. I really don't think for a 12 kilowatt hour battery is worth doing at any rate. It's just pointless. But I treat the battery with respect. I told them about the OBD2. I was half wondering whether they might come back. Oh, well, you've gone and put an OBD2 Bluetooth and software, and you've gone and screwed it all up, and you've killed the warranty, and da-di-da-di-da. Well, I think they realised by now that I wasn't going to accept that sort of nonsense, although I have heard others have been told that. They certainly didn't say that to me. So you've probably read this by now, at any rate, so let's carry on. I can confirm that the BMU, the battery monitoring unit, monitors the individual cells in the battery along with the charging cycle rates and usage. Yes. During the charging process, the BMU uses a sophisticated algorithm to calculate the state of health of the battery. This is the capacity amp hour figure shown on the supplied information. What supplied information? I'm the one that's giving you the frickin' information. You haven't given me a damn thing. Nothing. I had to ask when I had the reset done back in June. I had to insist that the technicians give me a printout of what the result was. That's the only number they've ever given me. So unless they're talking about my information, well, I know what amp hour is because I was the one who flaming supplied it. At any rate, let's move on. This procedure gives an accurate measurement of the battery capacity. Deliberate pause. The capacity warranty for this battery is for a loss of no more than 30% over 100,000 miles or 8 years from the date of registration, whichever occurs sooner. It's nice to have in writing from Mitsubishi exactly what my warranty is, so that's useful. Having had the information supplied by yourself, checked by my technical department, Fred, I can advise that the figures supplied and the degradation looks to be at acceptable rate. Come on to that in a minute. Taking into account the information supplied by the manufacturer, Mitsubishi Motors Europe, it's our opinion that at present there are no concerns with the rate in which your EV battery is degrading. I trust that this information will be of assistance, da-di-da-di-da. Right, so let's go back to what they said here. Advise that the figures supplied in the data looks to be at an acceptable rate. Well, yes, it really depends what you're looking at. There's no way that period of time, i.e. a 6.1% loss, that ain't acceptable. And that's why we had this. If they're saying that this period of time since that reset is at an acceptable rate, 38, so basically 39 down to 37, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I'm pleased that I'm still within half an amp hour of the actual official capacity of 38, but considering I started off at 38.9 after the reset, I don't think that's great. I don't know, but at least a fair old amount of time has elapsed to go from there to there. Not a great amount of time, but an improvement, I suppose. I don't know. Is it? I haven't really I should probably study my own numbers better. So there we go. That's kind of really it. That's where I am. I'm just going to accept what. Well, I'm not going to accept what they've done. I just don't think I've got any choice but to accept it. We are where we are. If I've still got the car long enough for it to go down to 30%, then I will be knocking on their door saying, right, fix it. And I'm sure they will. I was told by the Mitsubishi dealer, the local dealer, that nobody in the UK has ever had a PHEV battery replacement. Nobody. Well, I wonder how many people who run PHEVs realise or even care what their battery capacity is. Perhaps they don't really use it as an EV, they just use it as hybrid and they never charge it, which is what a lot of people do, in which case they're not treating the car the way it's supposed to be designed. It's an EV first, and then a hybrid second, and then a fully petrol car last. It does all of those three things: EV, hybrid, petrol. Obviously, hybrid includes petrol as well, but you know what I mean. So it has that versatility, which is one of the brilliant things about this car. Now, that brings me on to the car itself. What do we think about the car? Well, knowing what I know now about the battery issue, would I still buy one? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. This car is fantastic. It drives beautifully. It's as smooth as silk. It's big, great carrying capacity, comfortable, all of the above. It's got niggles. The ergonomics are rubbish on the switchgear, for example. But, you know, the actual technology in this car is fantastic. The way that it manages from EV to hybrid to ICE being internal combustion engine, the way that it manages that on the engineering that's gone into it it's just fabulous. I just don't think there's anything on the market that beats it, and that's why it's one of the best-selling plug-in hybrids. Although one of the reasons for that is that a lot of company car owners were getting good benefit in kind rates by getting a plug-in hybrid, and there you go, that's fair enough. But what I would do is, if I was to buy a PHEV today, particularly from a main dealer, and it was second hand. In fact, even if it was brand new, thinking about it, I would want, before I committed to buy it, a report on the state of health of the battery. And depending on what level it was at, would be a deal breaker for me as to whether I bought it or not. So, for example, knowing what I know today, if I bought this car, which only had 1,700 miles on the clock and had already lost 4%, I wouldn't have bought it. Would you buy an iPhone or any mobile phone for that matter, brand new, and the battery capacity had already gone down 4%? I don't think you would. Not brand new. And this car was basically brand new. Other than that, my advice would be, if you're thinking of buying a PHEV, I would very, very strongly recommend you ask for a report on the state of health of the battery. And if it's good, buy it and enjoy it. There is one other thing. One of the things I have learnt about the PHEV, apart from being a fabulous car, is that I have focused so much on this issue over the year that I've owned it that I probably haven't spent enough time enjoying it. And that is one of the problems. You can get a bit obsessive about this sort of crap. And if you think about it carefully, the amount of degradation, say down to 70%, would take quite a while, quite a long time, perhaps 3 years. After that, most people wouldn't notice the difference because the range had dropped and dropped and dropped, and people probably weren't paying much attention at any rate, so a lot of people aren't going to realise. What happens is that it means on EV only, you get fewer miles, and then in the hybrid kicks in. But it's still a superb hybrid. I mean, if this car did not have a 12 kilowatt hour battery, it had something a lot smaller, and it just worked purely as a hybrid, it would still be a fabulous car. So from that basis, you can say that in some respects, the degradation ain't that big a deal compared to what the car is like with all its other benefits. I don't know if that makes any sense. What it does tell me is I need to start enjoying the car and worry less about battery degradation. It is what it is. Because I've got the app, because I can monitor the data, and every PHEV owner can do that. PHEV Watchdog, Google it, have a look at their site, tells you how it works. Brilliant guy called Daniel Santos, who wrote the app and runs it. Lots of information there. And you know, the app is free. You just got to spend 20 or 30 quid on an OBD2 dongle, and you can monitor this stuff for yourself. And when it gets down to silly percentages, then tell Mitsubishi, and there's something called a warranty, and you'll get a new battery, or they'll more than likely, I don't think they will replace batteries. They'll do they'll do a BMU reset, which will basically a process saying that the logarithm that they're talking about in here is shite. So let's reset it, and then suddenly your battery capacity goes way up again, like it did here. And there's lots of other people out there who have got much better results than that. Full 40 amp hours, for example. Then happy days. There are also processes that you can follow yourself. There's methods which involve making the 12-volt battery go down to about 9 volts, something like that. That scrambles the BMU data and it resets itself, and hey presto, you don't have to go anywhere near a Mitsubishi garage or go to Mitsubishi UK. You can do that yourself. I haven't done that because my car's under warranty. If your car is under warranty, do not try it yourself. It's under warranty. Don't risk anything that screws your warranty up at all, would be my advice. But, you know, if it's an older model car, then there's ways of resetting it yourself. There's the Linkvist method, there's the Dublin method, and just Google it. Just Google it. It's you know, there's Facebook pages, the user groups. There's the UK Mitsubishi PHEV user group, and there's international ones. And they all talk about the BMU. Oops, sorry about that. The BMU battery degradation and the different methods that you can employ to sort it out yourself. But as I say, if your car's still under warranty, I wouldn't. So if you're interested in the car, find out about the state of health before you buy it, and once you've bought it, enjoy it. Enjoy it. That's the thing that I failed to do, and the thing that I'm going to start doing, because it is a fabulous car. I don't care what anybody says, it is a fantastic car. Right, so I wouldn't put anybody off buying one. I would just say do a little bit of homework and don't get too bent out of shape, because there are ways around getting the battery sorted. So that's my story of the PHEV, Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV drive battery. That aside, fantastic car, really enjoy it, and I still thoroughly recommend it as a vehicle, noting these issues. There you go, that's my story. If I ever have an update, it's probably going to be some way off, unless I have an almighty catastrophic drop in state of health over the coming weeks, months, or next year. I think that's kind of where I am now, and as I say, I'm just going to drive the car and use it for what it was designed for. Hope you enjoyed that rather long, rambling video. Yes, it did bang on a bit, sorry about that. But I do hope it was useful, and don't get too overexcited about this battery degradation thing. It is stupid, but the car is brilliant. That's all I can say for now. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be doing other stuff at some point when I get a moment or two. Until then, thanks for watching and listening to my drivel. Catch you again. Cheers.